What is it worth? This is a question that gets asked time and time again on a show called, Antiques Roadshow. Have you seen this show before? Maybe it's a bit past your time, but it's a show. I've only watched little clips of it, little shorts of it, and essentially what happened is the concept of the show is that someone will bring an old item, maybe a family heirloom, and they'll bring in a family heirloom and they'll bring them to these experts and they'll ask them, how much is it worth? What is it worth? And the hook of this show that keeps audience coming back is two things. What is it worth? And how will the person react? And what usually happens is the person, when they find out how much it costs, they're usually in shock. Sometimes they thought it was worth a lot more than they think it is, and it's actually been told that, no, it's not worth that much, it's underpriced. Or sometimes they're actually shocked about how much it actually costs a lot more than they think it does. And sometimes it's actually life-changing. And I'm thinking when I watch some of this, I wonder what the person is thinking when they get told that this item is worth way more than they think. Maybe they're thinking, well, what am I going to do with this now? It's worth so much. Am I going to sell it? Am I going to keep it for myself? What am I going to use the money for it? But the thing is, we actually never know what happens because all we know is how much it's worth and they go off. Because the appeal of the show is not about what happens afterwards, it's about how much that thing is worth. And in all honesty, this is what the world cares about most. It's about worth, money, greed. How much can I get for that? How much money can I accumulate? How many possessions can I have for myself? And the world around us puts just such a price on this that they'll do anything for the sake of holding onto and gaining more. Get the better house, the better car, the better job, the better schooling, the better superannuation fund. And the underlying idea behind this tendency to just value that which is material is because of the assumption it can just make life easier, more comfortable. And to be honest, all of us, including myself, we can get caught up in this, can't we? But what if, though, Jesus called us to something different? In our passage tonight, we will see in the midst of treachery, betrayal, greed, and hypocrisy, we'll see a woman who's willing to give sacrificially in preparation for what Jesus is about to do. A woman who doesn't give Jesus lip service, but life sacrifice. And I want us to see that Jesus calls us to that same radical life. Not to give him lip service, but give him our everything. So where does this story begin? Hypocrisy and betrayal. Hypocrisy and betrayal. So we'll see that actually there is a story that's happening behind the story, the bread around the filling. And so what is going on? Well, we see that 2 days before Passover, or coming up to Passover, there's this festival of unleavened bread. And these are festivals that are celebrating God's rescue of God's people out of Egypt, the Israelites. And the chief priests, they're looking for a way to arrest and kill Jesus. But did you hear what they said? Not during the festival, or they may be rioting among the people. And what we've seen throughout Mark's gospel is that tensions have actually been brewing and simmering between the chief priests, the experts in God's word, God's law, and Jesus. And now it's come to a head. It's gone so far that now they're wanting to kill the one person they've been waiting for, the one that Passover is actually all about. But they want to get rid of Jesus without a fuss, stealthily, without anyone noticing. But there's a problem. They don't actually have a plan of how to do this. They have all the intentions in the world. They want to arrest Jesus and want to kill him, but there's actually no one who can decide how they're going to do this. But there is someone who will bring an answer to their plans. Let me read from verse 10. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to hand him over to them. And when they heard this, they were glad and promised to give him silver. So he started looking for a good opportunity to betray him. So we see that Judas is the answer to their longings. Now they have a way in. They have an insider who will get them what they want, give them the ammo they will need to arrest Jesus. All for some money. Judas sells out Jesus or a deal that seems more attractive? Remember, this is a man who walked with Jesus for 3 years. A man who was friends with Jesus. But now he's a man who betrays his friend, all for his own selfish desires. For the deal that was more appealing than denying yourself, taking up your cross and following Jesus. More attractive than losing your soul for the sake of Jesus. Do you see the irony here? We see these chief priests. They were meant to be God's people, leaders of God's people. They were supposed to point people to Jesus, but what did they want to do? All they wanted to do was kill Jesus. But also they wanted to keep faith. So the most important festival of the year, the Passover, they were like, no, we're not going to give Jesus over them because we want to save face. We want to keep up our religiosity. And then we see Judas, the one who gave up everything to follow Jesus, and he's now sold out the chief priests, sold him out to the chief priests who seem to have the better deal. We've got hypocrisy and betrayal. And we even see this in response to the woman's extravagant act. But some were expressing indignation to one another. Why is this fragrant oil being wasted? For this oil might have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor. And they began to scold her. We see on the face value here, it seems that the dinner guests, in which may have included Judas, they cared about the poor. They talked up a big game. We wouldn't waste this oil on you, Jesus. We would just give it to the poor. As we saw with Judas and the chief priests, all they seem to care about is money and religious holidays, saving face. They're happy to betray Jesus just for some extra cash to keep up with their religious holidays, to look good before others. Hypocrisy, betrayal. And the thing is here that we could sit here and we could throw rocks at Judas, at the chief priests, at the dinner guests. That would actually be really, really easy for us to do. I know that's how I felt when I first read this story. But we can also be like this. Maybe not to the same extent of wanting to kill Jesus, but we can sell him out. Think relationally, we could prioritize our relationships over Jesus. We value others' approval over following Jesus. Maybe it's us staying silent about our beliefs at our workplace or at school with our family, just so we don't lose friends or create conflict. And maybe even intellectually we can sell out Jesus, elevating human wisdom above God's wisdom. Maybe watering down the gospel so they can fit with the beliefs that may or may not align with the gospel. Maybe that's picking and choosing parts of the gospel, especially those hard parts that they just don't necessarily seem to fit with what I believe. And we can also sell out Jesus by keeping up our reputation. We want to be liked. But our friends or family wouldn't like that I follow Jesus, that we follow Jesus. So you just don't stand up for him for the sake of keeping up your reputation. Or maybe it's actually you're someone here about keep being vocal at church, but you only do that only at church. You make yourself look good, performing Christian duties, praying, reading God's word, serving at church, giving the right amount of money. But you go home and you're not loving to your family. In all of this, the truth is all we're giving Jesus is our lip service. The famous song says this, Judas gave 30, I would have done it for less. Judas gave 30, I would have done it for less. In essence, our tendencies are just like the chief priests, just like Judas, just like the dinner guests. Hypocrisy, betrayal. But that's not all to the story here. There is actually a contrast, a way that is different to that. Life, sacrifice. In the midst of all of this, Mark, he focuses in on a woman, the author of the gospel. He focuses on this woman, the interrupter of the story. In the midst of Simon the leper's dinner party with Jesus and the guests, this woman, she comes over with her most expensive perfume. She cracks it open and she pours it all over Jesus. And I don't know how you would feel if someone had come into your dinner plans and interrupted it. For myself, I'm not sure I would have liked having someone to come in and interrupt the party, especially if it was a smelly one like that. And it actually reminds me, I don't know if you've ever had this experience before, but going to Westfield and you walk past the Lush store And that just that overwhelming, overpowering smell and aroma. Imagine that's what's going on in this dinner party. But imagine this person has just not only interrupted your party, they've poured something on that person that the party was all about. How would have you responded? Would you have been like the guest or Judas, and they come up to the woman and they get angry with her, and they tell her to, or maybe you just tell her to go away, or maybe you say, "What a waste! Couldn't you just kept it and just given it away rather than wasting on this person?" But look how Jesus responds to what the woman does. From verse 6. "Leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She has done a noble thing for me." He approves of what she has done. He's not angry or upset about what she has done. He not only approves, he tells them that what she has done is a really good thing. It wasn't a waste. Why? In verse 8, it says, "You always have the poor with you, and you can do what is good for them whenever you want, but you do not always have me. She's done what she could. She's anointed my body in advance for burial." Jesus is pointing out that all the woman was concerned was with Jesus. In contrast to all the dinner guests, Judas and potentially the disciples, all they were concerned about was their responsibilities. Were concerned about money, that she had wasted on Jesus. Like the amount of perfume she gave was about a year's worth of wages. All they cared about was keeping faith, keeping up with their religious holidays. And Jesus wasn't saying to them that he didn't want them to care for the poor. He actually points out that the poor will always be with you. And the New Testament actually speaks a lot about caring for the poor and needy. And God's heart is for the poor and needy of heart. And even Jesus speaks about the kingdom belonging to those who are poor in spirit. He even speaks of how he came to bring good news to the poor. You'll always have them, Jesus says, but not Jesus. 3 times in Mark's gospel, Jesus has said to the crowds, the disciples, that he will be betrayed, given to the hands of men, be beaten, mocked, and killed. His trajectory is cross-shaped, filled with pain, mockery, and death. And so Jesus, he's not surprised that he will be betrayed by the chief priests and Judas. He's not surprised that he will be persecuted, beaten, arrested, and killed. By saying that this woman is actually preparing him for his death, he is highlighting once again that he is in control. That what she's done and what the chief priests and Judas are about to do it's all a part of the plan. Nothing is out of his hands. But that doesn't mean it was easy for Jesus. He had to take the punishment of sin upon his shoulders. But notice that doesn't stop him from commending and pointing out to the dinner guests that this extravagant gift that the woman had given is all a part about what he was about to do. He is saying that this woman is getting him ready for his death. And did she know what she was doing? I think she likely knew that Jesus was about to do something pretty big. Especially she might have been a follower who heard his words, but I don't think she completely understood the magnitude of what Jesus was about to do. This woman did not spare a single drop of her expensive perfume. And Jesus will and did not spare a single drop of his blood for us on the cross. This woman's loving sacrifice points to the greater sacrifice upon that cross. And that's why this was a noble thing she did. And what was her reward? Look in verse 9. "I assure you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed, the whole world, what this woman has done will also be told in memory of her." In summary, she'll always be remembered by what she has done. She is a model of faith to everyone that reads about her. And you know what? This came true because we're reading about her now. Her story is written in all 4 of the gospel accounts. Her extravagant, self-sacrificial, loving act is recorded for all to see and read. her act lives on. Isn't that amazing? I don't know about you, but when I read this in preparation this week, it just struck me how amazing that promise that Jesus gives to this woman. He didn't need to do this for her, but he did anyways, at risk of his reputation being ruined. And because what she did was scandalous. It was unheard of. It was shocking. But it will always be remembered. It will always be a sign to us of what extravagant life sacrifice looks like, pointing out to the greatest life sacrifice that is known in all of human history. So in light of this true story, what can we do to show our love for Jesus? Well, firstly, loving Jesus isn't lip service. Loving Jesus isn't lip service. We see this with the chief priest and Judas. And we see actually in another gospel account, we see that Judas is the one that called out the woman's extravagant act. In John's gospel, it even says that he didn't actually care about the poor because he was a thief. He just sold out Jesus for some money. And all the religious leaders we saw were just concerned about their own image. They cared about keeping face. They could do the talk, but they couldn't walk the walk. All they gave Jesus was lip service. And Mark is highlighting to us that is not how we love Jesus. Imagine this. Imagine I want to impress my wife, and I told her every day, I love you more than anything else. I send her sweet text messages, I send her letters, I send her lovely food. I do all these wonderful things for her. But when I'm at home with her, I don't spend time with her. I spend more time on my phone or doing other things. I prioritize other things over her. And when she asks me to make a sacrifice, I spend spending less time on my phone or spending less time with my friends. Instead of listening to her, I just give an excuse. And then imagine she comes up to me one day and she goes, Hamish, do you really love me? Or do you just like the idea of me? Now, this is a fictional story. This hasn't happened, but this can actually be how we and how I can be a lot of time to act towards Jesus and those we love. We say all the right things. We seem to do the right things, but to be honest, all we're giving Jesus and those we care about is just empty words, lip service. Listen to what Jesus says earlier in Mark's gospel. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life because of me and the gospel will save it. For what benefit does a man gain the whole world yet lose his life? What can a man give in exchange for his life? Jesus wants all of us, our whole heart, our whole life sacrifice, not just our words, not just our actions, not just some of us, our everything. Everything. In essence, loving Jesus is life sacrifice. Another way of saying this is going all in for Jesus. As you think about it, as Jesus accepted the token of that woman's extravagant love, and as Jesus has given our all for us, Jesus calls us to love him by being a living sacrifice. But what does this look like? Well, there's an old hymn called Take My Life, and it's a song that's written in response to what this woman has done and the actions of Jesus, and it actually really helpfully gets us to think through how we can show that love to Jesus. And one way to think of it is, firstly, is our hands. Our hands. The hymn highlights how, in light of what Jesus has done, we ask Jesus, take my hands. Let them move at the impulse of thy love. What it's saying is we ask Jesus, take control of how we use our hands, how we use our time, our talents, our gifts, how we use ourselves. And our everything includes this. And so I wonder, how could this look like? Well, it could look like a lot of things. Maybe there's a way you could show your love for Jesus at home. It could be helping your wife or your husband preparing meals for the week. Or it could be helping your mum or dad by setting time aside during your week to help them out with the cooking or cleaning up around the house. Or maybe it's helping out at that work colleague who you know is just going through a really rough time at the moment, and you want to just spend time with them and see how they're going. Maybe you've been thinking a while of how you can serve here at church. how you can use your talents, your gifts that God has given you. And now you're thinking, well, I think it's time that I need to chat to someone here about how I can serve best here at Mitchenbury. And so it could look like a lot of ways. But Jesus wants our hands to show him how much we love him and his people. Not out of duty, out of response of his extravagant love to us. So our hands. Secondly, our voice. How can we use what we say to love and honor our Lord Jesus? Maybe it's holding back our tongue when we feel tempted to say something unloving towards someone else. Maybe it's speaking up at work or in our family when someone is being hurt. Maybe it's speaking up when someone is getting mocked or persecuted for Jesus. Maybe it's inviting that friend that you've been that you've been reading the Bible with and you've been wanting for so long to invite to church, and now you feel like it's the time. Invite them to church. Maybe it's that family member that you know is going through a really tough time and they just need someone to pray with them and read the gospel with them. I want to encourage you, to be honest, when I was thinking about this week, it's something I need to remind myself of, is we can actually use our voice to honor Jesus and love those around us, sharing the love Jesus has shown for us. So our hands, our voice, our finances. How can we use our finances, our money, to love Jesus? Well, as we heard last week, and you may have heard in AGM today as well, it was really encouraging. I found it really encouraging to hear about those in our church, and maybe it's you, who have definitely given their all for Jesus by increasing their giving towards the work of the church here. You, like the woman, have extravagantly, out of your love for Jesus, you've extravagantly given because of what he has shown you. But as we heard, and we heard in the AGM this morning, there is still a gap. There is still more that can be given to the work of the church. And so I want to encourage you to think carefully, but to look at the cross. Could that be me that helps in bridging that giving deficit so the work here at Mitchenbury Anglican can not just stay the same, but continue to grow? Could that be me? That's one of the many ways we can show our love for Jesus with the finances he's given. Whatever little or much we have, Jesus, he wants all of it. He doesn't care how much. He doesn't care if it's an alabaster jar, a whole year's wages, or a little copper coin. It's about the heart. Am I giving my all to Jesus? So our hands, our words, our finances, lastly, our desires, our heart. Maybe for some of us, we have big aspirations for our lives, a family, friends, a nice house, a good job, a good school, ability to go on holidays, having good food and good clothes. And I'm not saying that these aren't good things, but as Jesus says, are they worth losing our souls for? Or is it more worth giving our wants and our desires over to Jesus and trusting that he has them in his hands? Maybe it's giving up some of these desires so we have more time to spend with our family, more time to serve here in ministries at church, more time to read God's word with our friends or family members who don't know Jesus. Maybe you are someone here tonight, after hearing about the extravagant love of Jesus, you want to commit your life to him for the first time. And if that's a way you can express giving yourself over to Jesus, and if that's you, I would love for you to come and chat to me or Mike or other ministers or even the Christian friend or family member who brought you along. We love to begin that journey with you. But simply, it's just saying to Jesus, thank you. Thank you for giving your life for me. I didn't deserve this because I have not obeyed you. Please forgive me. I give you my all. And so if that's you, I'd love for you to come to me or others here, and we'd love to pray with you about that. So I want to ask us tonight, how will we give our hands, our voice, our finances, and our desires to love Jesus as he has loved us? Well, listen to what the hymn, Take My Life, begins and ends with. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in endless praise. Let them flow in endless praise. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at thy feet its treasure store. Take myself and I will be ever only all for thee, ever only all for thee. And it's shaped by life and love. So I want to ask all of us tonight, what is Jesus worth to you? Is Jesus someone you can just get something out of, like that old family heirloom on the Antiques Roadshow? Or is it like the woman, someone worth giving everything for? As the famous hymn goes, Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sinner left that crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Jesus is worth giving our all, our whole life for. He's worth it. So let me pray.